the magnetic north and versus true north. True north is the way that the lines, the grid pattern is set up on the planet. Because the magnetic north is not right at the North Pole, our compasses are attracted to the Earth's magnetism. There's a big magnet up there, and there's a North Pole, and they don't live in the exact same place.
What's up, everybody? We've got an exciting one for you here today. It's Jimmy and Mark on the, I almost said, because I was about to say Jimmy and Mark on the mics here, but I almost called you Mike, which would be like the first time in 200 some odd episodes. Anyway, Jimmy and Mark here in person, but then virtually joining us is Mr. Greg McHale from Greg McHale's Wild Yukon. So very excited to have him because we're going to talk about land navigation. And now a lot of us, we bring up all the time on the podcast. We brought it up a ton of times. Onyx maps. We even had them on the podcast.
Yes.
And Mark, you use them a lot. I use them a lot. Everyone I know uses them a lot. It's great to be able to pull out your phone and you've got everything right there, a map. It tells you everywhere you've been. If you put on the tracker, it tells you, you can drop pins. It's anyone with a bad sense of directions ticket in and out of the woods. Mark, for those not watching, just raised his hand. And it's a great tool that I think, you can also save your maps offline, so you don't always need to cell reception. It's something I think will come up probably here. I mean, I already brought it up, but maybe it'll come up in terms of ways that you can utilize it to its maximum capability. But also, I think one of the important things to discuss, and one of the things that I think Greg is quite good at, and that's why we have him here, is let's say you don't have that. I mean, to put all your reliance on something where you have to rely on a cell phone battery to be on and charged, and you have to also rely on the fact that even if you're using your offline maps, what happens if you venture out of your saved map, something like that. Or it doesn't always have, I know if you save like a really big map, it doesn't always have all the little, it gets a little bit less detailed or something.
You drop your phone, you lose your phone,
Yeah.
It falls in a creek. You're on one of Craig's. Now we're all messing up names. You're on one of Greg's wild adventures, and the kayak tips over, and bam,
Exactly.
now you're stuck.
So, Greg, how do you, when you're out in the wilderness there, which, I mean, anybody who watches your stuff knows that you are out in the wilderness. You've done all your adventure races too, where you've gone on some pretty crazy adventures. And you're just having to navigate across terrain of all types and not get lost. Obviously, you found your way back every time because you're here with us today. So how are you doing that? Are you using a mix of apps like Onyx and some orienteering skills, or are you kind of like, I don't need those fancy electronic maps. I follow the stars and the sun and the whatever?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, guys. But I guess I definitely use a mix of everything. I'm not that old that I grew up without GPSs, so I didn't have to start with a map and compass. But I know that I did start with a map and compass, and I find that for me, in the places that we're hunting and where I used to be racing, the adventure racing is all just map and compass navigation. There's no electronics was allowed. So I had to get proficient at the basics, what we would consider now the basics of navigation. And I think that those tools, the basic tools of navigation, are still, they're such a huge part of my everyday hunt that they're mandatory, because like Mark alluded to, when you're out, you're out in the backcountry, and some backcountry is more wild than others, but it doesn't matter. You literally drop that phone, which has everything in it, and you drop it in the creek. And I literally dropped, my telephone in a creek while crossing on it with an ATV. So I never recovered it. But one of those things is, if that happens, what do you do? Mm-hmm. If you don't have the skills to be able to orient yourself, basically all you have the ability to do is backtrack your way out of there if you can. and go home.
If you can, yeah. That's
Okay.
actually why I carry an emergency beacon, Jim.
Because the if you can is kind of the problem.
Yes.
So does that start with the, you know, being able to backtrack your way out of there? Does that start with, like, you know, Mark, won't speak on your behalf, so I'll let you speak to this, but let me throw out the idea. I think, let's say you go into the woods and instantly the second you step foot in there, you're completely tuned into, you know, what you're hearing, what you're seeing, maybe what you're smelling, what you're feeling, trying to find deer, trying to find sign, trying to, you know, locate the best place that you could have the chance to, you know, encounter a deer and hopefully shoot it. Hopefully a buck too, you know, big old buck. You like those, right?
No, absolutely.
I think. So anyway, is that just where then you feel like you lose a little bit of the sense of, you know, it's like when somebody puts a big plate of a delicious hamburger in front of your face and you kind of black out for a little bit, then you wake up and you're like, oh my gosh, it's gone. You know, you just sort of like black out because you're hunting, and then you're like, oh my gosh, where am I when you finally come to?
I mean, I've definitely had that happen before, for sure, where you're just, I mean, you're tuned in and you're like, trying to find sign and, you know, being, you know, trying to be stealthy and, you know, you're walking, stopping, glassing, but not necessarily, you know, paying attention to, you know, where you're going. And then, you know, maybe you're navigating through and around and over different terrain because whatever, you know, beaver pond, and then, we got to cut this way and there's some water. We ran into that. So now we got to, then all of a sudden, you know, everything looks the same and got some question marks, and you're like, wow, moss does grow on every side of the tree. Stuff like that.
It's easy to get turned around when you're not focused, when you're laser focused on one thing, and it's not necessarily where you are. You've got these blinders on to everything else because you're so tuned into that animal or what it is that you're looking for. And you're just not seeing what's around you. So that, you know, that's happens to every year. We hear of people that, you know, literally the lower 48 that get turned around, not necessarily hunters, but they get turned around in the mountains and perish. Mm-hmm. Like it just happens.
Yep. Well, and you're talking about all these great electronics, Jim, and I've got a GPS. I still use a GPS. You know, I use my Onyx on my phone, but they allow me to be lazy, you know, and in some ways, like, take a little bit of a risk, right? Like, hey, don't lose your phone. But I mean, there's no guarantees with that, right? But you can be like, yeah, I can just go hunt around, and then, you know, at the end of the day or whatever, be like, push it up. Okay, there's my track. Yep, go this way. Bam, you know, get out of there. But that's probably a irresponsible way to head into the woods.
Could be. Mark, you found in your research some phrases and terminologies and tools and things like that you were going to bring up. And let's see, we'll throw some of these at Greg here and see what he thinks is the best place to start.
So let me get it on my phone, Jim. Like we were saying earlier, I didn't print it this time. So, like we talked about, talking land nav. So and these are some things, Greg, and I want you to, you know, guide us through this. Well, navigate us through this conversation as you see fit, because you're the pro here. But some things that I was kind of like looking up, and maybe some things I've had questions about. Navigating with a map, compass, protractor, navigating in, like, you know, flat terrain or dense terrain with few landmarks. You know, like, hey, everything looks the same. It's not like you're like, oh, there's that peak over there, let's head for it.
Right.
Using the sun, perhaps. MGRS. What the heck is that? Shooting a bearing. We got 3 norths, apparently, Jim. We got
3.
True north, magnetic north. Give me the grid north. Declination, back bearings. What maps do you like to... I mean...
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff to talk about. When you start to talk about navigation, it's a geeky thing. Like, you can, like, guys that are really, really into nav. Like, for me, it's always been very functional navigation. So I've never really geeked out on the terms or geeked out on the math. Really, for me, it's just about having an understanding of where you are relate that to a map or a tool so that you can move your way through terrain as easily and quickly as possible. So all of my navigation has come from that adventure racing background where I could be thrown into Australia in the middle of the outback, and you're 24 hours before the race starts, you're given maps and you have to plot out 400 miles of course, and then you have to navigate that course.
Wow.
So it's very always for me, it's been very functional navigation. So what is it? Like you need to know the basics, and the basics are many of those things that you just mentioned, like declination. Okay, what is declination? It's the difference between magnetic north and true north. And depending on where you are on the planet, those things are going to change. So it's a fundamental thing that is important to being able to navigate and not be in some situations, many degrees off from the point that you're trying to hit.
Wow.
And now ultimately navigation is trying to get from one place to another, not necessarily in a straight line, and not miss that point. Mm-hmm. So when we're talking about, hunting in the mountains, mountain hunting and navigation is probably the easiest navigation there is, because like you said, you've got these points out there that you can look at and you can see, okay, that mountain is there. I see this lake down here. And often sometimes you need to get elevation to be able to see some of these land features, but it's really understanding the different types of land features, the direction of travel of rivers, and all of these things to paint this picture, which is a flat surface of a map. And now you're painting a mental picture of what this looks like, what this map looked like to what is around me. Mm-hmm. And when you have that ability and you learn how to do that, then you can start to really get into the nuances of land travel of, okay, now what is the foliage on this side of this on the north side versus the south side? Oh. What areas are better to travel? What's going to be quicker? Where the animal's going to be? Are they going to be feeding in an open grass slope? Or are they going to be down in the timber? So there's so many things in navigation that you can geek out on. But the basics, I'll go into, the declination. Like most people don't even know, what this looks like. They've probably even held one, but actually use one.
Greg's holding up a compass, by the way.
Yes, for the record.
The beautiful thing about a compass is you can pretty much do anything to it and it's not going to fail.
Huh. Okay.
So you can, with the exception of losing it, just like your phone. Right. So as long as you have a compass and you have some basic knowledge of how to find north and then how to relate that to your map, then you can start to navigate your way through terrain that you've never been in. Some of the most difficult terrain is, like you said, those flat timbered country that you can easily get turned around. You have zero references, above the trees, and now you have to know how to navigate, because right. if you don't, you can do circles for hours or days.
Do you find that it's easy to start walking in a circle, like on accident? Because I always just pictured to myself, I'm like, well, you just head in a straight line, for example. But you always hear people talk about going in circles, and they're like, oh, I've already been here once before. How do you end up accidentally going in a circle? Does that? Yeah,
I think it's a big part of the terrain that you're in. Because what our brains and what we're programmed to do is take the path of least resistance. Mm-hmm. Okay, so when we're traveling in a direction and we think we're going straight, and then all of a sudden there's a clump of alder, and now all of a sudden we're going, okay, what side of this alder is the easiest side to go around? So we go, okay, we're going to go to the right, and then we think we're going straight again, and then there's another, there's a rock formation. Well, we got to go to the right of it. And then now all of a sudden we're going right. And 5 hours later, you find yourself back to where you were. Now, I think it's, I think the people that actually happens to, that they literally go in a big circle, they just have no idea about navigation. So they have no idea where they are, and that they're going, obviously that they're going in that circle. So one of the big things that I do is, even if I don't have a compass, I'm always making a mental note. Okay, I just went right. Now I need to go left. Even if that takes me through some terrain that I don't want to go through, I know that I got to do it in order to stay on course.
Mm-hmm.
So, and in those areas where there are zero land references and you're just undulating terrain and timber, that's when you need a compass, because I guess your phone, but I find it so much faster because I can just pull this compass out. I know my bearing, put the needle on north, and I'm just gone. And then what I'm doing is I'm looking at the next feature. And maybe it's sometimes in really, really difficult terrain and that really close, that next feature might only be 20 feet. It might be 15 yards. And now you're picking that straight line, using your compass, and you're hitting that next point, and then you're doing it over and over and over again until you get through that terrain. And that's the only way to navigate through it quickly, because if you're looking at the phone, which we have with us, and we have the maps on the phone and the little blue button that's going lighting up, and it's like, but you can't really tell that you've maintained that specific line.
Right.
It's more challenging for sure. And a compass is just super fast and super easy. Once you get to use one, once you start to use it and understand how it works, there's nothing faster for navigation out there.
Interesting.
There's no technology that's faster.
And no technology, and it's not new technology. Sometimes that's the best technology. Greg, can you go into that, like what you're talking about though, like with getting that bearing and then putting that needle on north and exactly kind of what's happening there?
Yeah.
Okay. Without a map and the show, it is challenging. But so first thing, I will go back to the declination, because the difference between north for magnetic north and true north. Okay, so in the Yukon, we're 20 degrees east of true north. So your compass the compass needle is a magnetic needle, and it's going to point to magnetic north.
Okay.
So in the northern hemisphere, the magnetic north is 20 degrees from where we are, is 20 degrees off of the North Pole. So my needle on the compass is going to turn there automatically. So on this compass, which is just your average general purpose compass, it has the ability to change the declination on it. So you can go right to the back of the plate, and I can change to 20 degrees east declination. So that's an additional 20 degrees. And this is getting into the nuances of the whole navigation thing. So once I do that, now the lines on my compass are set up to the 20 degrees. So now I don't have to touch it anymore. So I also have a map here, and it's going to be challenging because all the world is built up into grids.
Sure.
Right? Longitude and latitude. And every grid, depending on the size of the map, so I often use 1 to 50,000 maps. I think I understand that maybe you guys, another common size is 1 to 200 or 1 to 24,000. So those are common size maps, and that's just how tight of terrain that you're looking at on that map.
Okay.
So most of the maps we used to race with around the world were 1 to 50,000, and that basically 1 centimeter on the map is equal to 1 kilometer. Okay. So all the grids on the map, you'll know, okay, every square on this map is going to be 1 kilometer. So you can navigate, and you can roughly estimate how far it is with just your finger. which is a super handy tool to have. And obviously all the map or the GPS is now you just, or the phone, you just put your finger on it and run the line and it just gives it all to you. So I'm not an anti-technology but the ability to have both these worlds,
right.
It just provides a level of safety and a level of understanding that if you do get in trouble, that you can find your way out.
Yeah.
So
for sure.
Yeah, that's a big deal. And I think, also, I mean, the earth isn't flat, right? So when you're looking at that map scale, like what might be a mile or a kilometer might be a little bit different than just, doing a few loops on the old track.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And that's the one downfall of the map is the terrain situation, right? I don't know, do some of the programs like out there, Onyx, will it tell you actual terrain? If you're going up a hill, will it give you, okay, you've actually traveled a mile versus 3/4 of a mile?
So at least as much as I've used it, you've got the different layers. So you can have almost like a topographic map layer. Then you've got a satellite with topo lines, and then you can have just like straight satellite. And I think they've got like a 3D view now.
Oh yeah, they do.
Well, as far as like the distance, though, I think anything I've used it, at least thus far, is like straight line distance.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of similar, but I
But
mean,
nothing's changed, whether it's the maps as well. And that's where the contours on a map provide you the understanding of, okay, and the beautiful thing about these maps, certainly old school maps, and now that there's other really good mapping systems that you can, like, I actually use like Carta custom maps, because you can literally customize what it is that you need on that map. So, but some of the maps, or all of the maps, have a big legend on them that gives you all of the information that you are going to need to know about traveling through that country. So contours, when you look at a mountain on the map, and being the flat map, and you have contours on it, you can say, okay, every contour is 20 meters. So those things are stacked up on each other. So that's going to be a steep rock face.
Mm-hmm.
That might be terrain that we cannot get up through. So now we're going to have to look for a different way around, and that even before you see it. So a lot of the navigation and some of the hunts that we go on, like this past year, we left, or this hunting season, we left home, and it was a 70-kilometer trek just to get to the mountain that we were going to hunt. So you need to know how to navigate to that location before you even start hunting, and navigate through the night. Now that's a whole different ball of wax there. But yeah, there's a lot to know, and if you don't have some of the skills, the basic skills of navigation and being able to look at terrain, whether it's on your phone or whether it's on your map, and then you can find yourself, just hunkering down for the night because you can't go anywhere.
What did when you got into adventure racing, and you said there's obviously this there's this rule you can't use electronics, so you knew you're going to have to be using a lot of maps, compass, that kind of old school style navigation, the tools and whatnot. What was like the first thing you started to do to train yourself up to be more accustomed to using that and use it more effectively? Did you go out and get the tools and just start wandering around kind of just nearby in places that you already knew, and just see how the compass reacts, and see how, referencing the map and seeing some terrain features on a map versus what you're seeing in real life? Was it just kind of practicing by just kind of, quote, getting lost and just kind of figuring it out? Or is there actual really good little training things that people can work on, or tools to make it easier or whatever?
So one of the things that comes to mind is you're as good as what you have mastered, and not what you have been taught. Okay, so you can sit and you can watch a YouTube video, but until you get out there and you actually get on the terrain. So what I did is I would grab a map, I would grab the compass, and I would go out and just run through areas that maybe I knew. And then once a week I would go, okay, we're just going to go cross country for 6 hours, or to this Saturday, this is what our day is going to be, and we're going to navigate our way through it. And as I'm looking and as I'm going along, I'm going, okay, there should be a drainage coming up here on our left. After that drainage, then we're going to go around up through a saddle, and then should drop down into another drainage. And these are just constantly watching that map and moving with the map. That's often what we do is we often stop and we look at the map, but if you can actually learn to move with a map in your hand, then it's just a different level of a navigation ability. Because often we sit there, like first time when you're starting to learn, you'll stand there and you'll be looking around and you'll be looking and making sure that, and what you have to do, you have to make sure that you're on track. And then the more you practice and the more you do it, then you can actually travel and you can still do it, and you know what's going to be coming up. So that's exactly what I did. I just spent days and hours in the bush and just with map and compass and just moving. And the thing about navigation is it's perishable. Like I did it, at a high level for a long time. And then even getting into the mountains last season, middle of the night, coming back after we killed the sheep, raining, top of mountains, can't see anything. And I had a 1 to 50 on me and I blew past. No, I didn't go far enough. I hit the first ridge when I needed to go probably another 300 yards. And I hit the first ridge and started going down that ridge and just going in the wrong direction. I needed to be another 40 degrees off onto a completely different ridge, which would take us down to our camp. So, that not a big deal. It was recognized, before. It was never going to be catastrophic. I would have dropped down into the valley and then had to hike back up, another 1,000 feet to camp. Big deal. But, the sooner that you can catch these things, the better. But to the point is that it is like many things, it's perishable. If you don't use it, you will lose it. Mm-hmm. So it's something once you learn it, it's going to take a little bit to get back if you don't use it again for 5 years.
Mm-hmm. I could see how I obviously can see how navigating at night would be extremely difficult because now you're losing tons of frames of reference around you that otherwise would be there. But I can also see, in the daytime, again, if we go back to that area that is flat, full of timber, it's not that much different. Well, I mean, you can obviously see where you're going, where you're stepping, so it's a little bit maybe easier to maneuver without tripping and falling on your face, but it's still not that much different in terms of you lose sight of some other potential reference marks. So what are you doing specifically there? Because in those situations, I can see how it's not necessarily good enough where, you might be looking at a map and say, oh yeah, well, there's supposed to be a steep rock face over there, and there it is. And there's supposed to be a bunch of something over there, and there it is. Now you have to be saying, well, first off, you have to figure out where you are on the map, which I'm curious how you do that when it's nighttime. And then also now...
Or daytime.
Or daytime, sure. Yeah, good point. But now, I need to get over to this point, so I need to know how far it should be, how far I'll have to hike or walk or whatever. And then how do you translate? Do you know how much each one of your strides is or something? Is that how you determine how far you go? Or...
Exactly. So nighttime navigation is a completely different beast. And the ability to navigate at night is it probably takes 5 times the amount of effort and 5 times the amount of time in those situations to become really good at it. So it's really micro navigation, and that's why the best macro navigators in the world are the best micro navigators. So like orienteering is such an amazing sport because it adds, this physicality to map and compass navigation. And they're often using these 1 to 5,000 maps. So really detailed, very detailed maps. And what that skill provides when you get into a larger, 1 to 50,000 map is it allows you to really start to look at the features that you can see. So, we have the ability, we have good lighting now, good head torches, and you can probably see in open country, you can see, a couple 100 meters sometimes, right? So you're really looking at these micro features, and you're looking for creeks or just depressions, and just really understanding. That's where understanding of a map really helps, because you're not going to get that off of your Onyx. Or I shouldn't say that. I can't even say anything about Onyx because I've never used it. I've used just some apps that, EarthMate or whatever comes with the InReach, and you're just you're not getting those micro features that you could off of a map. So, to what you're asking, so you need to know how quickly you can move through a certain type of terrain at night. So if I know that I want to get to the peak that's over there, I can't see it. It's roughly going to take me, under these circumstances, I figure it's going to take me an hour. What do I have to pass along the way in order to know that I'm on the right track to get there? And how long am I going to walk until I hit think that I should be there? And then if I'm not there, how much further am I going to walk before I realize I'm not in the right spot? So it's recognizing your mistakes before you make them, and to make sure that you're on track. That's really what I'm always doing, is I'm looking, okay, dense bush at night. We're probably only moving through this at, 2 kilometers an hour. You're never as fast as you think you are. So often we think, well, we should be here. And you're just, because you want to be there, right? You want to get that, and you think you should be there, and then you start to second guess yourself. So yeah, that's just being very, very aware of all of the things that are around you. And then you start to pile on days and sleep deprivation and all of these kind of things, and it just adds to your ability to make mistakes easier.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah, it's like setting up checkpoints for yourself. And I could see how if you're standing in some spot and you're like, okay, now I need to get from here to there. And I know you said that when you get to the really high level, you can be moving and using your map at the same time. But I'm thinking in my case personally, if I were to not look at a map and be like, well, I need to go over there somewhere, and then start moving, then I'd almost mess myself up even more, because now it's like, well, I knew where I was earlier, and now I got myself to this new spot. Now I don't know where I am, but and you can really mess it up without actually taking a minute to just be patient and plan something, plan some sort of route of attack, if you will.
Right. And one thing that popped into my head, and I'm sure, I've been in the situation, I'm sure other people have too, Greg. And, I guess in this scenario, I'm picturing kind of like more, flatter, denser terrain, right? And with few features, and you've been hunting, and all of a sudden you look up, you're like, every tree looks the same, and I can see about 50 yards. So is there a way with a map and compass to sort out, be like, yep, I'm turned around, I don't know exactly where I'm at right now. Is there a way without electronics, but to sort out where you are on that map, or are you kind of out of luck at that point?
Yeah, to figure out where your little blue dot on the map is.
Yes.
Yeah, you've kind of painted the worst case scenario of land navigation, where featureless terrain.
Oh God, no wonder it was so scary.
Dense bush, featureless terrain, and not knowing where you are. So the way that I would figure out where I am with that in that situation with a map and with a compass is if you have an idea of kind of where, if that was in the Yukon and you were just in the middle of nowhere, you're just trying to survive is number one. But maybe where you're hunting, say, public land, that you just need to go, okay, I got to get out of here, right?
Right.
Like, and you're not going to find exactly where you are, but you must have, hopefully you have some sort of an idea that you're here on the map, and
or where you came from.
Yeah, where you came from. But if you don't know what direction of travel that you actually were traveling in, it's pretty tough to even backtrack at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you knew that you came in off of a road that was to your east and you've been traveling away from the road, well, then I would just put my compass, turn it back toward the east, because I've been traveling west, and just go straight line and until you hit that road just to get out, right?
Yep.
So, but that's a tough scenario when you don't have these land features, and those are, I was racing in Australia in the outback, and if you didn't know the direction that you were going in when you left the last checkpoint and you weren't on it the whole time, everything looks the same.
Yep.
Everything looks the same. There's very few features in some of that country that you're going to be able to see. Maybe you need to climb a tree to pick up something, and maybe in that scenario, I would probably, if there's trees, I would probably climb a tree and try to pick up some sort of land feature somewhere. But there are places on the planet that's just not possible even.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, and you bring up a really good point there, and some of that is just being aware before you dive in, and I think that can be like you're always excited to get going, right? And maybe taking a minute to be like, okay, yep, I came in on this road. This road runs east to west, and looking at your map, and I guess hopefully you have a map with you actually. In the scenario that I'm describing, I jumped in, thought it was gonna be a super simple hunt, and didn't have a map or a compass or a GPS. So
this is a real live situation that happened.
And it started to snow, and I was underdressed. It was super neat, Jim. I've talked about it before.
Oh, I remember this one.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember. No, I don't think I had fire start. That's when I started carrying fire starter, no matter the hunt. But Greg, to the point of having a map and compass with you and knowing the basics of how to use it, that's all we would have needed. That's all we would have needed to get out. And, it was kind of swampy terrain, but you knew, like, it was kind of actually, it wasn't like a road. It was like a reclaimed railroad grade that we'd come in on. But, you'd been able to figure out, hey, if I head X direction, and we just kind of keep that bearing, and we might have to circumvent and navigate around some things. But like you were talking about earlier, where you're like knowing that you just kind of need to get back to that
track
bearing,
or whatever. Yeah, bearing.
That, it would have been like not a big deal. It actually wouldn't have been a big deal.
Right.
Even in that situation, you wouldn't even need a map. You just need a compass.
Just a compass. Exactly.
You need a compass because you know you came in from, say, the east. You know that you got to do 180, and you're roughly going to, and then follow that bearing. You're roughly going to get back to that road.
You're at least going to.
You could be a mile down it this way or a mile down it this way, but who cares at that point, right?
Right. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things when you're trying to hit an exact point. Like, say you had your truck was on the road, right? And you wanted to navigate back to your truck after you've been hunting for 6-8 hours. You know where you are. So one of the things that is kind of key to, it's not key to navigation, but it's a good tip to have, is I always navigate to one side or the other of the point that I'm trying to hit. You want to get back to your truck. So say I'm going to navigate to the right of my truck. I know it's on this road. I'm going to navigate to the right on purpose. So when I hit the road, I'm going to walk it back to my truck. Because if you try to navigate after 4 hours out there, or heck, even 20 minutes out there, and you can't see it, you try to navigate directly to it, you're good. You don't know whether you're going to be to the left or the right, and then you don't know which way to go.
Oh, okay.
You can hit that road, walk it to the left, and you're in the exact opposite direction of your truck.
Yeah, so, don't leave it up to chance where you get to the road and you go, oh, now I got to make the old 50-50 guess, and then how far do I walk before I realize I'm not going in the right direction? Or yeah, that's a good point.
So what are you doing to intentionally navigate to the right or left, besides being like, this is what I want to do, but like, how are you doing that?
So I'll bump my bearing off by, say, 2 degrees.
Okay.
So I'll just say, okay, so my bearing is 280 degrees, will be straight line to my target. I'm going to go 282 over the course of the next couple hours of hiking. That's going to, and then a lot of it, some of it really becomes an intuition as well. A lot of navigation that I can do without the compass, only by virtue of the fact that I've spent so much time behind the compass. And I know that I'm not going to get, for the most part, I'm not going to let terrain features push me in a direction.
Okay.
It's super easy to let terrain features, like I was talking about before, really push you in a certain direction that you don't want to go. And I still find it's just, I tend not to get pushed around too much. And for the most part, I'm fairly close to where I'm trying to hit. And then when I micro navigate and I'm going like tree to tree, or then you're pretty bang on almost all the time.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
Do you find in your hunts you've done and your adventure races you've done, have you been around people? I'm sure a lot of the people who are into that are just the kind of naturally, good with sense of direction kind of people. But there are people who just don't seem to be good with natural sense of direction. Have you raced with or hunted with people who weren't born with that innate sense of direction, but they just had to train it into them? Like, is there still hope for people like Mark, or does it kind of just have to be? Is there a certain level of intuition about it where you just you kind of have to have that little bit of a sixth spidey sense, or that little bit of a compass built into you?
I've been around people that are a human compass, Jim.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that it's certainly like anything else, you have a natural tendency for it, or maybe you don't, but it absolutely can be built. Just the more time you spend doing it, and it's really just being aware of your surroundings, making yourself be aware.
Mm-hmm.
Like literally mentally saying, okay, I need to realize or see what's around me. What is around me? Now, some people have the, that ability more than others. And even on some really good, most part, the really good adventure racing teams, everyone has a bit of a sense. But a lot of times, there's 2 or 3 people on the team sometimes that aren't navigators. Like they could navigate general world hunting scenarios, but you're never going to win a race by allowing them to be behind the map and compass and calling the shots. I've been that guy. I've raced with guys that are like far superior navigators than I am. They're just naturally wired that way, and that's the great thing about adventure racing is maybe they're a great navigator, but maybe they're not physically as gifted, and all these things come together to make a really good team too. So. Mm-hmm. I've got. I did a race with a buddy, and I'm going to throw him under the bus. Ryan Leaf. He actually works with Jim Shockey, and Ryan, great friend of mine, one of my best friends. He was super good athlete. We did a race down in Mexico once, and we were night navigating, and we were navigating down. I was navigating, and we're going down this creek, and it's we're 24 days into this race, and we see all of a sudden there's headlights coming in the opposite direction. And so this is another team, and they're going the exact opposite direction that we are.
Oh dear. Somebody's wrong at this point.
Someone is wrong here. So I'm pretty confident, and you never say you're 100% confident, but I was really confident that I knew we were in the right. And so we kind of go by each other, and my buddy says, he goes, and not right away, but probably, half an hour later, he's like, he's not feeling it. But he also hasn't been behind the map at all. So he's like, man, we're going in the wrong direction. And I'm like, no, we're not. And this went on, another 15 minutes go by, and he's like, now he's getting to the point where, dude, we've like blown by this checkpoint like an hour ago. We need to turn around now. And I was like, come on, buddy. You haven't even looked at the map. How would you possibly know? And he's like, he's a dude, I'll bet you my left nut were in the wrong spot. So that's a pretty confident statement.
That is. Yeah. That's a big time bet.
Kind of pushed your chips in at that point.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, I'll take that bet, but this is where we're going. We have to continue on. I know it's at the top of this ridge. We got to go down this drainage. We got to climb up this ridge and hit this saddle, and that's where it is. And it's going to be another, few hours, and we're going to get there. And to his credit, he was like, okay. He laid it out there, and he was like, let's go. So we kept moving, and I was, thank goodness I was right. But that's the whole thing is navigation. And I've been there. I've been that guy that's like, we are not in the right place. Like, we should have been there by now. And when you're not the guy that's running the map and the compass, in my world, you have no say.
Right.
Like, to yourself, just shut your mouth and just put your head down and trust that your teammate is on the ball. And if they're not, trust that they're going to ask you for your input when it's time.
Yeah.
And that's just, having good teammates and being in difficult situations together. So racing with in that situation is so I still heat them up, every now and again. I still heat them up about that one, but it's navigation at night is super challenging, and it can and not just at night. You can think during the day, you can think that you're in one place and just adamantly you just believe it, but that's if you haven't been keeping track, then the odds are that there's a good chance that maybe you're not there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Did they ever find the other team?
No, they came out of the woodwork at some point. I don't even know exactly, where they were from. It's kind of like every man for himself. And it's very common in that sport is that you can be going in different directions. And part of that sport is being lost, being unsure exactly where you are and getting back on track. Now, it may have taken them another couple hours. They may have not got back on track, until the next morning. Mm-hmm. But typically, for the most part, everybody comes out of the bush.
No, and you bring up a really good point there. Like you've been running the map, the compass, and kind of going through those checkpoints. And I would think for him, like at least that was probably once you guys talked through that, like a really big confidence builder. Like, hey, we're going to go down I know we're going to be going down a slope. Okay, yep, we're going downhill. Yep, we're going to cross a creek. Okay, we did just cross a creek. Now we're going back up. It's like, okay, no, we are, everything's, corroborating or whatever. Yeah. Like, the 2 and 2 is coming together there.
Yeah, it's just communication, right? Like just actually walking the team through, walking him through what I have in my mind, because this is what I've been looking at. So when I can communicate that, then it's like you said, okay, this, I can trust you a little bit more. Now let's let's hit this next feature, and then all of a sudden it starts to come together. Yeah.
Yep. It's interesting and such a, I was going to say like a very Wisconsin-y parallel, right? The corn maze, Jim. Something I was completely unfamiliar with until I moved here. We've got those here. Have you ever heard of a corn maze, Greg?
No.
It's where they'll take.
I guess I didn't realize it was a thing that other people maybe wouldn't have heard of.
This is the only place that I know that does it.
Really?
Maybe comment if you have corn mazes in your state.
Yeah, let us know.
Particularly popular around Halloween, and they'll take a cornfield and cut a very intricate pattern. I think they actually use probably all the GPS crazy stuff and plug it into a tractor. I don't actually, you know what? How do you make a corn maze? I don't know. Anyway, but
Good
it's
question,
like
actually. I
twists
don't know.
and turns, but the scale is such that if you're not, at least in my opinion, if you're not looking at the map, and I'll send you a picture of what a corn maze map looks like.
Yeah.
But within just a couple feet, you could really be off track because there's all these different little cuts, and it generally makes some Halloween themey pattern. Maybe it's a giant pumpkin with all these twists and turns or whatever. But it's interesting. If you don't have the map in your hand, you don't know where you are, and you have to be following okay, yep. There's this turn, okay, turn here, okay? Yep, we're going to go around a little bend, boom, turn here. It's quite interesting, actually.
The ones you've been to have maps, huh?
Yeah.
I think I went to an off-brand corn maze. They didn't have a map. It was just kind of hope you get out.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what the scale is, but it's interesting, though. Anyway, my point is, if you're holding the map and you've been following it, to the T, you know where you are. If not, you don't know where you are.
Yeah. Corn maze, eh? Huh.
Yeah.
Maybe that's I should just go practice more in the old Wisconsin corn maze.
We'll go to one of those really gigantic cornfields and just make the world's biggest corn maze and send Greg in there and see if he can navigate his way out.
The nice thing about it, though, you can get out if you want to get out.
Right.
It's
not solid wall.
You can just go west.
Just bust through them. But yeah, it is such a matter of I think back to any time that I haven't been paying enough attention. You get overexcited, you rush into a situation, and you didn't pay attention to where you started, where you went to get to where you are at this point, and then that's just where you really find yourself in trouble. Right. I mean,
weather, fog. I mean, that's a nasty one.
Yep. But I feel like I don't think that I'm one of the greatest people with a natural sense of direction, but I do have it somewhat. But I also, if I think back to some of the times, every time we go on a hunt, if we park the car and we're going to hike in somewhere, I just always reference, look at my phone and see Onyx, what the Onyx map says. And I'll just kind of see where our car is and see what way north is and what way we have to go into it. And then at least I kind of, from there, can always have a general sense. And it's kind of that spidey sense where, all right, well, if my back is turned that way and we're going in this way, I know my back is facing south, east, west, north, whatever. And then just any turn I make from there, I'll know based on my own little compass what direction that went. That kind of stuff helps. And then you're paying attention. Of course, then I wind up being the guy, too, who, when I'm hunting with people like Mark or Eric, they're always like, did you hear that? Did you smell that? Do you see that? And I'm always like, what? No, I had no idea. Or there's a deer. Where? What? Hold on. What?
At least you know where we are, though.
Yeah, exactly.
Greg,
that's a great thing about a team is you bring a skill that Mark doesn't necessarily have to the same level, and he brings one that you don't. Yeah. That's the best part about that. Those are what the best teams are made of.
Yeah. There we go.
Hey,
great team.
Hey, Jim, shoot that buck. Okay, where do we need to go to take it out? Greg, so what, walk us through then maybe, just a general scenario. You're going to start hunting or you're going to start heading to, you're talking about this hunt where you guys had to travel a long distance before you even got to where you were going to kind of begin hunting. But you've left the truck, you've left the plane, you've left the whatever, the horse you rode in on. What's your step one? And this could be not just only map and compass, but maybe you have a GPS with you or whatever. What's your order of operations before you even head out?
Yeah, that's the key. You just said this. is building a plan before you walk out the door. So that's where, I spend hours in front of the computer, and then looking over maps, whether it's Google Earth or, because it's not like the areas that I go and hunt, typically they're areas that I've never been to.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know the terrain is. I have a rough idea what the terrain's going to look like. And then I have to figure out, what's where. So I'm looking at, Google Earth is probably the very first place that I start. So, and then, I'm looking for different types of areas with the information that I've got, and then accessing that. So how can I access, a place that's 100 miles away? Where is the nearest, if it's by plane, where is the nearest body of water? Where is the nearest place that I can riverbed that I can put a plane down to get to, say, a certain mountain block? So that's where it all starts. And then I have to, obviously I can tell whether it's a body of water, whether it's big enough for the plane to get into. So I need 2,800 feet to get the 185 plus all the guys in there, and I need to be able that much to get out as well. So now you're looking for a certain size of lake. So that's where I start. So I get that spot picked out, and then I start to go, okay, so now what are the land features that are the path of least resistance to get into that mountain block that I'm heading to? So then you start to look at, at things like type of, obviously not just elevation of terrain, but also type of, vegetation. So, okay, if I go around to the north of this mountain block, there's much less timber, so I'm going to be able to move through it faster. I might have to take longer, but if I go around to the south side, it's full of alder, and it's, you can tell that it's buckbrush, and it's just going to take that much. So those are all the kind of things that I look at before I even leave my house. And you can see a certain amount of that on Google Earth, and that that kind of provides a basic information for how you look toward navigating through that country before you even get there. So
yeah,
that's a big part of what I do. And then once it's boots on the ground, then okay, all the preparation and everything that you've done at home may go out the window, because now what you didn't notice, there was this canyon that is, it's only 50 feet wide, but yet it's 200 feet deep. And it just looked like, a creek coming off of a mountain. So now you got to go out and up and around that or figure your way across it in order to keep on going. So it's being flexible in the field and just kind of going with what as long as you've done as much prep as you can do prior to hitting there, then it's just being flexible and just figuring your way around stuff.
Mm-hmm. And then, like, let's say you've landed the plane, you got her parked, and you're heading out. Are you getting your GPS out and dropping a pin on that, like, right away before you head out?
Yeah, actually, that's Carl's job. So when Carl's, I'm super. I'm very well known for just walking away from the plane. I roughly know where it is and where what I need to do to get back, because I don't know where I'm going to be. But the other guys in the team are very like, okay, you need to know this. And sometimes we walk away and don't do it. But for the most part, it gets picked up on the phone for sure.
Gotcha.
How about that?
And then
second level of having the ability to get back to where you need to get back to, and it's super smart, because when you're carrying, say, a sheep off the mountain, and you have to carry it for whatever 20 miles or 10 miles, whatever it is, you want to get back to that plane, and you don't want to have to do another 2 kilometers because you deviated from where you should be.
Well, and much like your phone or your GPS can run out of batteries, you can drop it in a creek, you could probably lose your compass, or you could probably lose, something else, a map or whatever, some means. I mean, if anything can happen to your phone or GPS, it can also happen to your other tools. So having a redundancy isn't always a bad idea.
Yeah. What navigation tools are you carrying? Like what's on Greg every trip?
A map and a compass is on me every trip, and sometimes it doesn't even get pulled out.
Sure.
Like depending on the terrain, it just you can see it, and if you're not night navigating, you don't need it, and I have a fairly good intuition, kind of like Jimmy or you're suggesting. So sometimes I don't even need it, but the phone is always there because obviously we need a phone for photographs, and there's just so much information on there now, whether it's game management zones and all of this stuff that you can quickly look up regulations, where before I would just never carry them and wouldn't have the ability to access some of that information. So yeah, we there's 2 phones for sure, with maps on them. So I carry one, and I know Carl carries one. So we always have 2 phones, map and a compass, and that's pretty much what we got for navigation.
Gotcha. So you're not carrying a traditional GPS anymore, then, huh?
No, we haven't carried a GPS for actually probably a couple of years now.
Yeah.
Now we do have the InReach, so the InReach, is a GPS basically when you pair it with your Earthmate, right? So
okay. Do you have the mini or the regular or the full size one?
Yeah, I've got the old school one still.
Okay. I need to get me one of them, Jim.
You don't have one?
No.
That's frightening.
It's like it is. Rolling the old dice.
Yeah. Well, that's a pretty minimalist bit of kit there, though. I mean, for you, Greg. So you're not carrying around a ton of tools there or a ton of extra weight with that, and yet still, I mean, you've got all the important stuff to be able to get yourself out if you're in a pickle, and you've trained yourself too. I think that's always so important. Is all too many people get gear and then they don't train themselves on it, and they just expect that somehow when stuff goes south that you're just gonna your
magically figure it out.
Adrenaline is also somehow responsible for
somehow,
hours and hours and months and weeks and years of learning.
Somehow the panic will make it work, Jim.
Yeah. It's crazy how adrenaline makes you smarter. Einstein must have been just freaked out of his mind all the time.
Yeah. I was going to ask something else. I can't remember what.
I'm still super intrigued about how there's so many different norths. Why? So there's this magnetic north. Side note, I heard an interesting topic about magnetic decay. Apparently there's magnetic decay in the world or something like that. And so our compasses are way weaker than they were back when the world was first, invented or something.
Oh, wow.
I don't know. Something like that. Magnetic decay. Look it up. I'm not an expert on it. Heard it once. Anyway.
One thing actually, I think in the line of thought of thinking about magnetic north and compasses and magnets, you don't want to be holding your compass next to something that's metal, right, Greg, when you're trying to read it?
Yeah, I mean, anything that's metal or anything that can attract the magnet is going to obviously throw it off. So it's kind of like just hold it away from your body as much, not way away from your body, but just hold it away from your body, and the needle settles down into the right spot for the most part. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, the magnetic north and versus true north, Jimmy, is like true north is the way that the grid pattern is set up on the planet, like the fake grid pattern, and all of those lines run north to south, right?
Okay, yeah.
In east to west in the opposite direction. So because the magnetic north is not right at the North Pole, our compasses are attracted to the Earth's magnetism. So in the Yukon, the Earth's magnetism, when I pull out my compass, is 20 degrees to the east of the actual North Pole. So we have to be able to compensate for that. that 20 degrees difference in order to stay on track on our maps.
Sure.
Because our maps are just oriented toward the North and the South Pole or the equator in the latitude. So yeah, it's that simple. There's a big magnet up there and there's a North Pole, and they don't live in the exact same place.
Well, why'd they put the North Pole in a dumb spot like that?
I don't know, Jim. Call and complain. Put it in the suggestion box.
Cancel the North Pole.
Canceled.
Santa, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Can that foul up? Can that differential or whatever? Can that foul up your like? Let's say you've got a regular GPS or something like that. Can that push you off in the wrong direction? You're like, oh yeah, we need to go this way, or
yeah, no, because the GPSs are all run off of the satellites, right? And so you're getting that picture from above you versus a magnet that's in the earth.
Yeah, they don't care about magnets.
As long as those grid patterns or those satellites are picking up, a number of different satellites are picking up the same location, then you're going to get an actual pinpoint.
Gotcha. Have you ever had weather foul up the functionality of a GPS or something like that? And you got maybe dense dense canopy or fog or anything like that?
Foul up satellite reception?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, in the north here, it's gotten a lot better over the last number of years, but 20 years ago, or when GPSs were, I don't think that the accuracy of them was near what they are today.
Yeah.
So even like now, I think that for the most part, we're pretty golden. I think the whole planet's pretty golden now.
Yeah.
From what I understand.
How about your compass, though? I mean, we brought up the metal thing. You kind of hold it a little bit away from your body. But is there ever anything that when you're looking at your compass, you just see it kind of go a little haywire?
No, a good a poor, like a garbage compass is just going to be, it's just not built well. But you get a good compass from a good company, and it's just the quality of it is just that much better, and the needle settles down quicker. And see, some like orienteering compasses, some of them are really great because that needle settles down really quickly. So that if you're running with them, it just settles down and you can keep on track.
Okay.
Whereas a compass that is not good, you'll see it kind of going in circles, and it might take a long time before it actually settles down. And that's just like anything else. If it's garbage, it's garbage, right?
Fair point.
No, that is a good point, though. Yeah, you definitely don't want to be waiting 5 minutes to, finally sort out that, yep, I think that's where that needle needs to be.
As your fingers are frostbiting.
Yeah.
The compass in the back of the Rambo knife, don't rely on it.
Well, I guess I'm back on the compass market once again.
You're going to need a new knife, Joe.
Yeah.
That's a good point. I mean, not all compasses are created equal. Invest in a good one, and I don't think a good quality compass is going to cost you an arm and a leg, but worth the investment there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Sweet.
Anything we didn't cover?
Yeah.
Anything that person maybe getting started in this, or wanting to maybe have that redundancy built in, or better learn how to use it?
I think that, not necessarily so much even about the compass. It's about situational awareness.
Sure.
And the more we rely on technology, the less we become situationally aware. I saw on, I don't know whether I saw it on social media or whether it was TV or whatever it was, but I saw this Amazon truck, and he drove his truck down in and basically wedged it in this culvert. This because that's what the GPS where it told him to go.
Oh, I heard about this. He was trying to deliver something to a wedding on a golf course, and he got stuck in the golf course bridge, I think.
There, exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly the one. So there's this brick, culvert kind of thing where he drives his truck right into it. Like, that's just complete lack of situational awareness, where you're following this GPS that tells you where to go. And that can happen in the bush, or, that if you're not being, you can have all the map and compass skills, but if you find yourself that you haven't been paying attention to what's going on, you can find yourself in a situation where you can't see any of these features, and now you're hooped anyways.
Mm-hmm.
So it's being aware of what is in your surroundings, and us as hunters, that's fairly innate for the most part. Like, and now just taking it up a little bit, to a little bit more of a level, and you've got all the skills that you need for hunting, I think.
Yeah.
I like that confidence, Greg.
Absolutely. Well, cool. Awesome stuff, Greg. Appreciate you jumping on this one with us and sharing some of that knowledge. Mark, we should get a compass or compasses.
I've got a compass.
Why have I never seen it?
Because I don't take it out very often. Maybe I need to take it out more.
Maybe. So, yeah.
I don't know. Do you guys have much use for it where you hunt? Like, would it be a really good tool? Like, I don't know.
I mean, I think it depends on, I'm thinking primarily like, out of state hunts and things like that. And really that one instance that I'm talking about where my buddy and I got turned around, I've talked about it on numerous podcasts, but that was in Wisconsin, and it was like it was in like a big public land, like river bottom type area. And it was like full of, you had timber and then marsh and beaver ponds and, whatever. And so, but it was very flat, right? And so not a lot of features, and just having a compass and taking that bearing on the way in and knowing, which ways the roads run and stuff like that would have been game changer.
You can find spots, it seems just about anywhere where it can either get real thick or real sort of monotonous in some way where you kind of don't really have a great bearing or a great landmark or something like that. So, it's definitely a thing.
And a lot of the stuff, well, not a lot, but some of the stuff out here, where we're at, I guess, but heck, case in point, Greg, I was coming out of a public land spot, a couple of weeks ago. And I mean, I wasn't like at risk of not getting out. Right. But, coming out in the dark and like, oh dude, I've been in here before, I can get out of here. Well, I hit accidentally a little finger ridge. And just like you said, I started going down the wrong ridge, and I'm like, nope, that's, something's not right here. And actually, the thing of it is one of the ridges in that area, it's kind of like bluff country, but it's got a big like limestone bluff that you probably wouldn't want to fall off. So you wouldn't want to continue down that ridge, too far. But it's just easy to do, particularly in the dark. It changes things. You take one, you turn this way to, like you said, navigate a little thing, and you're like, oh yeah, I'm on the ridge out, and you might not be on the ridge out.
Yeah, no, it happens quick, and often our intuition and our innate sense to believe that we're right and want to believe that we're going in the right direction, because we don't naturally want to turn around and have to cover the same country that we've already covered. That becomes our worst enemy, is just the I don't want to go backward mentality. So I keep pushing and pushing until it gets to a point where, oh my God, went way too far.
Yeah.
You have to do it anyway. So it's overcoming that, that part of your brain that just wants it so bad to be right.
Yeah. Well, and some of that, hopefully, alleviating that happening. And like you talked about, just pre-planning and knowing where you're at and knowing how to read contour lines and kind of what those things might mean. And a lot of, unfortunately, I guess, learning how to do that, at least for me, has been ground truthing it, right? When you look at the map, you're like, oh, I think you could go up that, no problem. I mean, yeah, those contour lines are stacked pretty tight, but I think you can do that. And you're like, nope, that's a cliff face, actually. So, and then I guess learning how to recognize those things, and hopefully, a fairly benign area or situation. And then, if you're packing an animal out, and maybe you're not coming out exactly the way you came in, but knowing, yep, we're not going to go that way because we are going to have to backtrack out of there because there's no way down there or whatever. So, I don't know.
No, totally.
Practice, I guess. I guess that's what they
practice like anything else. It's like anything else.
Go get lost.
Get lost, Jim.
You didn't hear that from us. Good stuff.
Awesome, Greg. Thanks again.
Thank you,
Super informative.
Appreciate it. And
No worries. Thanks for having me.
Thanks everybody out there for listening as usual. And you know where to find Greg. Follow him on social media. Check out his show, all that good stuff. And hopefully, Greg, we've had you on a couple times. So hopefully we have you on again here in the future at some point. But thanks everybody. We'll see you on the next one.
Yep.
Bye.
Cheers, guys.
All right, that'll wrap it up for this episode of the Vortex Nation podcast. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Hit that subscribe button so you can always stay up to date on the latest happenings over here at the Vortex Nation podcast. You can also follow us on Instagram at Vortex Nation Podcast. Again, everybody, thanks, and happy hunting and shooting. We appreciate it. Have a good one.